Miss Joan, I am your very funny games mistress. And here's a little bit about funny games. Thanks for the moral support, Sophie. One request I get pretty often at the cafe is for a game that will make the players laugh. Most people seem to think that there are funny games and there are not funny games. So if you want an experience where people are laughing at the game table, all you have to do is pick one of the funny ones, and the rest will take care of itself, right? No, of course not. What's fun or funny for one person isn't for someone else. So if your plan is to just pick a funny game, there's no guarantee that's going to work. I mean, if you happen to know a game that everybody at your table thinks is hilarious, then yeah, you're all set, go for it. But what if you're not sure what games the people at your table like? Or what if everybody at the table is getting kind of sick of that one funny party game that you play every single time? What can you actually reliably do to bring the laughs to your game table? Some people will tell you that the answer is simple. Games aren't funny, players are funny. It's not about picking a funny game, it's about picking funny players and being funny yourself. Yeah, that's really simple, isn't it? Of course not, it's completely useless. Comedy's really tough. Even professionals have to work really hard at being funny. And all we're trying to do here is have a nice time at the game table with our friends. So if picking the players doesn't work and picking the game doesn't work, what can you actually do? Well, you might not be able to get a professional improv comedian to your table, but you probably do know somebody who really likes to laugh, and that's actually almost as good. See, even if you're not that great at making jokes, you can still make a game way more funny by being that person at the table who just can't help laughing at all those little situations that keep coming up. Like, if you're playing charades and somebody starts miming something that could maybe possibly be taken as kind of adult-ish if you squint really hard, and somebody starts giggling at that, it probably won't be long before the rest of the group picks up on what's going on there, and then they'll probably have to spend a bit of effort to stop themselves from laughing along with it, and pretty soon it's a whole thing. Laughter is contagious. If one person starts, the others in a group will usually follow.
Or you'll be left laughing by yourself like a maniac.
Which is also hilarious, actually.
Not a real-life example.
And you are definitely going to need a group. If you want to hear a lot of laughing at your game table, always play with a decent-sized group of players. I mean, you ever been to see like a stand-up comedy act when there's only 2 people in the audience? I mean, even if the performer's really good, the best they're going to be able to manage is like...
What's it like? It's like that?
Kind of like what I get when I make a joke.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that hurts.
Pain's hilarious, unless it's your pain, and then it's not.
Yeah, I think it was Mel Brooks that said that tragedy is when I get a paper cut, comedy is when you fall down a sewer and die.
Ouch.
If you want the kind of huge, uncontrollable laughs that you see the big names getting on Netflix, you're going to have a crowd. This is actually a major reason why party games tend to get more laughs than other kinds. They're specifically designed for around 6 to 10 players. Much more than that, and it can actually be really hard to be able to hear everybody at the table. Less than that, and the contagious nature of laughter just won't get as many chances to do its work. Some party games will still market themselves as being playable with 4, 3, or even as few as 2 players, but in my experience, once you drop below 6, each player that you take away from the table cuts the amount of laughs in half. By the time you're down to just 2, you might as well be playing chess. Which is not to say that you won't laugh, but we'll get back to that later. Next, and this is actually probably the most important one of all, play with people you feel comfortable being around. I can't stress this one enough. It is the single biggest factor, and I've actually got some science to back it up this time. People laugh a lot more often than they think they do. We do this in conversation all the time. We don't even notice that we're laughing. Most commonly, it's the person who is talking who does the laughing, and we use it as a kind of a social signal. We use laughter to indicate that we like someone, that we agree with them, we get them, we understand them, and we do it way more often when we're around people that we feel comfortable with. I mean, a game cafe can be a great place for first date. I've seen this so many times, and I'm probably going to do a video about it eventually, but it's not because of the laughs. 2 players just isn't enough for the kind of party games that are designed to elicit laughter. And even if it were, it can actually be really hard to laugh when you're around someone you've just met. Okay, so that's all pretty good stuff, right? We can just call it good here, Sophie. We're done? Yeah. Useful advice for people who want laughs at the game table? No? Oh, that's right. Our Patreon backers voted for a video about funny games. What makes a game funny? And I haven't really said much about that. It's not been about funny games. I've only been talking about funny circumstances. If I'm working at the cafe and somebody, comes to me for help, looking for a funny game, it's not really helpful for me to do a lecture about laughter and how it happens. They want me to actually help them choose a game that is going to help make them laugh. So dropping the games aren't funny, players are funny cliche is worse than useless. And even if I could get away with it, I wouldn't, because the game you pick does matter. Here's how. First of all, presentation. This is another reason why party games rule this aspect of the hobby. If you want people to laugh, it helps an awful lot if you can convince them ahead of time that they're going to laugh. A game's box and components can be a help or a hindrance here. If the box cover and the components are all brightly colored and look simple or cutesy or reminiscent of other games that your friends have played before and had fun with, that helps. If they look very serious or grim or somehow reminiscent of a game they played at some point that they really didn't enjoy, you're going to be in for a rough ride. Secondly, there's brain real estate. Every single shift at work, people tell me that they just want something that's not going to tax their brains, something that's going to be fun and makes them laugh without having to use a lot of brain power. And of course they say all of this without realizing that it takes their brains an absolutely enormous amount of effort to crack a joke, or even get a joke. Maybe more effort than it takes to figure out a good move to make in some heavy-duty strategy game. But all snark aside, they are actually onto something here. You see, different parts of our brains do different kinds of work. Laughter is governed by parts of the brain that are concerned with social cues, with discerning people's motivations. When your brain is engaged with that kind of work, even if it's hard work, you laugh more easily than you do when it's busy with other things. So, if you pick a game that requires players to try and read one another's facial expressions or anticipate one another's choices, that'll fire up the same neurons that they need to get laughing. Bluffing games like Cockroach Poker or Coup are all about trying to figure out when somebody is lying to you. And social deduction games, whether it's the public domain ones like Mafia or Werewolf, or the published ones like Fake Artist Goes to New York, or Deception Murder in Hong Kong, are all about trying to figure out who is on whose team. These games provoke laughter because they warm up those parts of the player's brains. For most people.
They also create neurodivergent panic.
They absolutely can. The fact that funny games don't work for everyone, very, very important. Different kinds of brains deal with different stimuli in different ways. Dealing with a player who's on the spectrum or someone who lives with ADHD might want to consider the stressful effect that this will have on them.
Or social anxiety.
On the other hand, some games require that you absorb new information, or remember something in detail, or analyze a situation and calculate the probable outcome. Those games use different parts of your brain, and as a result, they can suppress laughter. And the problem is, nearly all games are going to require you to absorb at least some new information. That's how you learn the rules to a game, even a simple one. And of course, this is why party games are the way they are. Simple rules means that you don't have to spend that much time in that place. Once you come to grips with the information, you can get past the learning part and get to the laughing part. Don't let that trick you into thinking that complicated games can't be funny, though. Every veteran game player can tell you about side-splitting moments that they've had in even the most complicated strategy games. Because you see, it's not actually about complexity. It's about familiarity. Take Dungeons & Dragons, for example. See these 3 books here? These 3 great big hardcover books with zillions of pages? These are just the core rule books for D&D 5th edition. We've got the Player's Handbook, which is the one that everybody has to use, and then there's the Dungeon Master's Guide, which the person running it has to use as well, plus the Monster Manual. This is a lot of rules. If you're not a big-time game enthusiast, then I suspect you've probably never even heard of a game that's even 1/10 as complicated as this one. And yet, watch any D&D live stream, and what do you see? Players and dungeon masters alike laughing their ever-loving guts out. This is partly because D&D is a storytelling game, where social cues from your fellow players are a big part of the play, but it's also partly because those players already know the game, so they don't have to focus right now on learning and absorbing new information and new systems, which would be using a different part of their brain. I can tell you with a high degree of confidence that not a single one of these people was laughing this much during the first hour of their very first session of D&D. Now, another thing that makes for comedy gold at the tabletop is failure. Now, success feels good, but it's not funny. That sense of accomplishment that you get when you put something together just so and it works beautifully, oh, wonderful feeling, but it's rarely accompanied by laughter. Failure, though. Failure is hilarious, and laughter actually has a special role in helping us to process the emotions that we tend to associate with failure. When we're together with a group of people and something bad happens to us all of a sudden, like we slip and fall down, or spill our drink, or accidentally hit our head on something, it hurts at first. We're embarrassed, everybody in the group goes quiet, and they're all worried about whether or not we're okay, but then, if we're not badly injured, something kind of amazing can happen. We sometimes start to laugh as a signal to the others in the group that we're okay, and then they start laughing too, which softens the sting of whatever misfortune just happened to us. Laughter is really good medicine, and it can also help us through embarrassing moments. And at the game table, this can be especially powerful and helpful. Making a dumb move, or forgetting about a rule, or losing badly at a game, these aren't things that anybody ever sets out to do. We're all sort of expected to make a reasonable effort to try not to let those things happen. But they do happen anyway, and when they do, they can be hilarious if we're able to set aside our pride and let ourselves laugh at our own mistakes. When we do that, we give our friends permission to laugh too, and that can really help us not to feel so bad. In fact, it can make us feel good and turn a negative situation into a positive one. So how can a game make us fail at some simple task that we know perfectly well how to do? Time pressure, of course. The human brain just doesn't work the same way when it's under pressure for time as it does normally. Something that would be just calm and simple and easy to do becomes stressful, and we freak out and make all kinds of mistakes. I mentioned telestrations in our last video, and the entire premise of that game is that failure is hilarious, and without that very, very short timer, it'd be a lot less funny. Every single party game that comes with a sand timer in the box pulls this same trick, and it works so well. Now, nothing's foolproof, of course. There are plenty of players for whom a ticking clock isn't funny at all, it's just stressful. So you're going to have to find other ways of making them fail.
So let's go out there and find ways to make our friends fail!
You bet! And that's the good news. There actually is no shortage of ways to do this. Every single play of every single game carries with it the possibility of failure. Did I ever tell you the story about the funniest game that I ever saw in my life?
No?
So, it was a chess game.
Okay.
You remember how Sam the Record Man down on Yonge Street used to have those chess tables out on the street?
Yeah.
These two old dudes were taunting each other and egging each other. It wasn't just the moves they were making, although those were hilarious too. One guy was down 2 rooks and the other one still managed to win. It was the way that they hit the clock, the way they taunted each other, the crowd is getting into it. Seriously, it was like watching Inigo Montoya fighting the Dread Pirate Wesley. It was awesome. And, I mean, most people don't think of chess as being funny, but it absolutely can be if your brain's clock cycles aren't so busy trying to figure it out that you can't engage those bits of your brain that are good at laughing. It's like that with any game. It starts out not funny while your brain figures out how to play. Then, once you've got it down, those bits of your brain can relax and you can start picking up on the funny stuff. This means that if you're at a table full of people with very different tastes and experiences with games, and none of them has ever played any of the same titles before, you kind of need to pick something that they can all learn quickly. Or you need to be okay with the idea that just the first few plays of this game are going to be a learning experience, and letting the laughs come later. Alright, we've covered what makes a game funny, we've covered what makes a group funny. That just leaves one more thing, and that is what you can do to make games more funny for your friends. And I've got 3 tips for you to help. First of all, you want to convince your friends that the game that you're about to play is hilarious. It's easy if you focus on the right things. Don't bother telling them about the rules, that's going to put them into absorbing new information mode. Instead, what you want to do is tell them about how it makes you feel when you play it. Does the game give you an opportunity to be complete jerks to each other? Does the game make you freak out and lose your cool? Does it remind you of a really funny movie or TV show, or something that happened to you that the other players can all relate to? These kinds of feelings and associations are going to prime your fellow players to laugh, and that is half the battle right there. Second thing, it's really important to include other people in laughter, and make them feel included. When you're laughing at something that a friend just did at the game table, your goal is to make them feel like they are on stage at a comedy show and they're absolutely killing it. If they feel like they're the butt of the joke and not really part of it, though, that's not so good. Right, Sophie?
Yeah, you want to get more of like the thigh area.
Last thing, be willing to laugh at yourself too. And yes, I know I'm always harping on here about how important play is and how it's never really just a game, but come on, it's a game. Try your best to put up a good challenge for your opponents, absolutely, but don't hold yourself to impossible standards, and don't feel like you're not allowed to mess up. And don't for a second think that it can't be funny and humanizing when you do. Remember, when you laugh at your own misfortunes, as long as it's a genuine, honest laugh, people are surprisingly good at telling fake laughter from the real stuff, that shared emotion will help you not to feel so bad about it. I guess what I'm saying here is, don't be a killjoy. There's an unfortunate tendency among many game enthusiasts to look down on casual games, party games, and the people who play them. I've been that person, and I really wish I hadn't. If you're a game enthusiast who feels frustrated when everybody else always just seems to want to play party games, I swear, I get how you feel. I'd be sad too if my friends never wanted to play my favorites often enough to get properly familiar with them and start seeing the funny side together with me. But if you want them to get to that point, you have to start by meeting them where they are. And that means accepting that you are not too cool for party games.
Yeah, Joan. You're not cool.
I've never been cool. Pretty sure I never will be. I'm starting to get comfortable with that. I'm also pretty sure I'm never going to be funny.
That's why I'm here.
Yes! Oh, now I remember.
Together we make one whole functional person.
And by the way, this goes for you casual players out there too. Yes, your first time playing a new title probably won't exactly be a laugh riot if the game itself is any more complicated than tic-tac-toe. But the way you get to the part where it starts being funny is by sticking it out long enough for your brain to get comfortable with it. And yes, you're going to have to pay attention, and you're probably going to end up making some embarrassing mistakes along the way. But the good news is that that can be funny too. With the right group and the right approach, pretty much any game can be funny, if you're willing to let it. Not every movie has to be a comedy to be worth watching, but even the darkest kinds of stories can be made richer and more beautiful with just the right touch of humor. It's like that for games too. Not every game has to be about laughing as much as possible, but by allowing yourself to laugh, and by inspiring your friends to laugh, you elevate your play, no matter what game happens to be on the table. Through the contagious joy of cutting loose and letting go, play can connect us to the silly, vulnerable humanity that we all share. Thank you so much for laughing?
Thanks for laughing, people!
Thank you so much for watching. The subject of laughter is a lot more complicated than it seems, and it's kind of understudied. If you'd like to know more, do a search on Professor Sophie Scott. Her work was invaluable for me in writing today's episode. If you've ever played a game that turned out to be way funnier or way less funny than you expected it to be, and this video helped you to kind of understand why it turned out the way it did, share it with other people who are sitting at the table with you and see if they agree. This video and everything we do here is brought to you by the kind support of our wonderful patrons, who got to pick the topic this time, and will be voting again for a future topic when the next newsletter goes out at the beginning of May. You can get in on that and support the channel too at patreon.com/JoanTheGamesMistress. There's plenty of other perks there too, so check it out. If you'd like some extra help with planning your next game night, you can hire me at JoanTheGamesMistress.com. I'll help you pick just the right games for your group and show you how to teach them. If you're curious about role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, I can help you and your friends to start your very own adventure. If you can't afford to spend money on me, don't worry. You're helping just by coming back to rewatch our videos. And also by clicking on the like button, subscribing to the channel, and clicking on the notification bell to make sure that YouTube will tell you about it whenever we post a new video. I'd love to know all about your own experiences with games that have made you laugh, or games that you expected were going to make you laugh and didn't. So please do tell us about those in the comments. Remember though, mean comments get deleted, mean people get banned. So play nice. Your turn. My name is Joan. I am your games mistress. Sophie is not here. Therefore, today we will be discussing funny games.
What?
Learn quickly. Or, you need to be okay with the idea that just the first few plays of this game are going to be a learning experience.
Unacceptable.
Laughs
Funny
have to be now.
Always.
Laugh now!
Laugh now!
German humor, laugh now! And that goes for you casual players out there too. Yes, your first time playing a new title probably won't be a laugh riot if the game itself is...
casuals.
Oh gosh, do we really have to bring up the specter of that whole mess? Least funny thing imaginable, and yet you're making it funny. I don't understand. Why am I doing a video about what makes things funny? I don't know what makes things funny. I know what makes people laugh, though. I did the research about the neuroscience.
Nerd. Yeah, they need help. They're all depressed now because you made them have a Sephi-free episode.
That's the last time I let you go free.
Freedom! I've had a taste. Now you can't keep me in the box.
Alright, you, back in the box.
No, not the box.
The fact that humor is so subjective is one of the main reasons I don't recommend looking to the content of a game to provide the humor, like cards with jokes on them. A game that relies on jokes for its humor is basically a joke book with extra steps. For those of you who don't know, in the days before smartphones, joke books were a common form of bathroom reading material, and today, I'm not sure anybody reads them at all. So taking that and printing it on a deck of cards and expecting that to provide the entertainment is just... Oh, I'll get to you another day.